Hey guys, and welcome to the Crafty Maker, and today we're going to be making a shin for our rescue armour. Let's get to it. So I'm just going to start by tracing out my pattern onto my foam, which is 10mm, the same as the one we did for the helmet. And I'm just using a white gel pen as it's easier to draw on, as you can see. So now we're just cutting it out, and then once it's cut we're going to heat form it because some of the pieces are slightly bent because of the foam curve. So while heating up the foam pieces, I will be shaping them into the curves that they need to be. So for the shin, I will curve it so it fits around the back of my leg nicely, on the top and the bottom. This also helps to put less strain on the area that's being glued up, especially the dart bit at the bottom and the bit around the top of the shin as well. So when I'm sticking this bit together, I make sure that I curve it in the direction it needs to be and give it a good push. I then start to work on the top of the shin, which will be the bit that sits behind the knee at the top. And I just make sure that I'm applying glue on each of those darts. And then once I'm satisfied with the glue, I will start from one end and work my way through to the end of the dart, making sure to push against the table to make a nice neat seam. And I'll do the same with the last one as well. So now our two halves are all made up and ready to go. We can now start to apply some adhesive down the centre of the spine for our shin. So I just want a nice thin layer so there's no webbing between the two if it's accidentally pulled apart. So starting from the top of the shin, I will push down a few centimetres and then I will push the bottom together and then just slowly work my way up the seam to push any air bubbles out. So now we're just going to start gluing the curved bits together. So again, just a nice thin layer on each side of the foam, just so it's got a nice contact area. So while we wait for the bottom to dry, we'll then start to do the top, which will be behind the knee. And then just from one side, we'll then push through and make sure that both corners meet on either side, just remembering to move any air bubbles from the seam. And we'll do the same with the top of the shin as well. So these three pieces will be forming the back of the shin. This is what gives it the curved shape at the top. So when these two pieces are stuck together, you can see it's starting to make that nice curved shape that will make the back of the shin for us. And we're just going to glue up the last piece. So this piece is 3 in total, so 3 little rectangles that will make a nice big panel for our calf. So now I'm gluing our calf panel onto our actual shin itself. However, I did struggle doing this. I was a bit too ambitious trying to glue all of one side, well, one edge to the shin. So the bits that I'm gluing up now, I actually did differently when doing the second shin, and I will show you that later in the video. So I basically glued around the entire curved part as well as the 2 straight edges, which I shouldn't have done. I should have took my time and I should have just glued the 2 straight edges, make sure they were on properly, and then glue up the curved edge. So this is where I started to run into problems like I just mentioned. So you can see I started with the corner and it turned out fine. I then went to the other side and started to do that. It started to mess up when the glue started to attach to the top of the calf at the back. Because it was attaching, it then started to pull everything out of place. So if I just started with the two side pieces, I could have manipulated them to the rest of the shin a bit better, rather than trying to manipulate the entire thing to the shin, which was starting to pull apart on one side because the contact was just starting to dry out. So you can see I'm struggling a bit trying to get that bit into place. You know, I'm just trying to push the seam, and I think I've pointed it out that I'm having trouble with that seam as well. I did later go back and add a bit more contact adhesive in the area just to try and make it stick better. So I then move on to the bottom of the shin, which is where I'm just gluing the bit that we're sitting above my ankle to the back of the plate that we've just made. So as you can see, I've just gone back in with some contact adhesive into those seams that I mentioned earlier, just in the hopes to bring them together a bit more, which turns out quite good actually. I think once the bottom bit's actually attached, it helps to hold the seams a bit better as well. So I've just slowly taken my time to just join the bottom bit to the rest of the shin to make it one whole piece, and then I'll slowly go around and just close up all of those seams that I added a bit of extra adhesive to. So as you can see, the seams start to look a little bit better now. So now I'm just working on the kneecap part. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some contact adhesive in each of these darts. So in the middle and the one on both sides, just so I can start to get that nice curved shape. So when we attach it to the rest of the shin, it will start to look like a kneecap. So now I'm just using my table to make sure that the seam is nice and neat, and of course this wouldn't be a cosplay video if Bella wasn't in it. So the heat forming has helped it nicely. It's nice, it's got that nice domed shape that we were after. So when we do stick all the little darts together, it brings the shape out a lot better rather than having to fight with the foam. So we're just going to set the knee bit to one side, and we're just going to work on the back of the ankle. So this will sit just behind the heel of my foot. So I'm just applying the adhesive to the shin, and then I'm just applying it to this little panel, which should have been heat formed before adding on, but I think it's I'm able to manipulate it quite easily. So then we're just going to start adding our adhesive to the knee part, which will then get stuck to the shin, and the shin is pretty much done. There's only one step left after this. So now we can start to put the two together. So I'm just starting with the actual kneecap part, and I'm making sure that the corners all meet, and then I'm just going to go around each side and make sure that they meet at the back of the actual shin pad that we've made, and then just give everything a good push to make sure that everything has connected very well, because this part's going to get a lot of motion in it because it's basically where your knee sits. So now we're just going to do the panel on the back, which is basically just gluing up three sides, and then we'll attach it to the back of the knee bit that we've just added to the actual shin, and then our shin is done. Then we just need to make another one. So this is where the process between shin 1 and shin 2 changed slightly. So I actually heat formed the back panel a bit more just to curve it a bit more, and then I only, as I said earlier in the video, that I only glued the sides because it was a lot easier to manipulate them. So I glued up the sides, and that's the first thing that I stuck down. I didn't glue anything else. So there was no adhesive along the back of the calf, there was no adhesive just above the ankle, it was literally just the sides. So I start from the corner again because that's just the easiest place to start, and as you can see it's a lot easier to work with. I mean, some of the seams are still kind of bad, but they're not as bad as when the first shin was done. So then it's just back to the normal procedure of sticking everything together, and then the shin's pretty much done. Alright guys, so that's the shin build all done. I now have a lovely pair of shins for my rescue armour. There are a few things that do need to be mended on these, such as the seam on the kneecap. For some reason the contact adhesive didn't quite set overnight, so the darts are now gaping open on a few, especially one of them. I have a really bad seam, so that's going to need amending. That's going to be fun. I do need to cut some of the backs of the knees down because when I'm actually wearing them they dig into the back of my thigh quite a bit, so I'll probably have to trim it and just round it over a bit so it's not as harsh on my actual leg. I do need to trim the heel bit as well because when I'm wearing them it tends to drag along the floor and I don't want this to fall off or rip off eventually, so if I cut it down then there's no hazard there, which is good because I don't want to be making these again. So that's the shins done. I think the last thing for this project is for heat treating and priming and painting. Other than that, the shins are pretty much done and ready to go. So the last thing I need you to do is like and subscribe this video and join my Discord so I can see any of your guys' cosplay costumes because that would be awesome. And I'll catch you in the next one, guys. See you then. Bye!